Being a single mom and doing it all by yourself is brutal. Learn the brain and energy tools to get back to your center and overcome your challenges.
Are you struggling with food and sensitivities, or do you have medical conditions that prevent you from eating anything you'd like? If that's you, welcome to today's episode of Date Like a French Woman, the podcast to help you approach dating as a sacred healing journey. And that is on all levels. Today, we're going to talk about healing your body, but it could be healing your your emotions, healing your energy, anything that falls under removing the blocks for you to create the space emotionally and energetically to attract the love that you want. My guest today is known as the medical chef. She's a doctor. She's a naturopathic doctor practicing nutrition and gut healing, and a health and nutrition educator and entrepreneur. Her business, Your RX Meals, offers personalized meal planning and chef services with a focus on health issues and food sensitivities. She also offers food sensitivity testing as an adjustment to identify the sources of inflammation and give guidance beyond the tasting. As a health educator, Dr. Elias speaks and writes about self-care and trying to find ways to bridge nutrition and health with self-worth and empowerment. I love that. Welcome, Alia. How are you?
Thank you so much. I'm great. How are you?
I'm great. I'm terrific, despite the technical difficulty that we ran into this morning. Oh my God.
Yes, I'm so sorry about that. I did not know what happened.
That's not only you that taught me a lesson to actually practice that with new guests beforehand. Live and learn. So,
well, thank you for having me today.
Oh, I'm happy. I was very curious about what you're doing when I saw you on Instagram. That's how I discovered Alia. And I hope I pronounce your name right? How do you pronounce your name?
Alia.
Alia.
I like how you say it better.
I guess I lived in Israel, and Alia is a word there. Alia. Okay, I'll try to remember that.
You can say it however you want. It sounds really nice the way you say it. Thank you.
So for our audience, if you're watching on replay, welcome. You can still put comments. And if you want to be notified, you can put notify me in the comments. Next time I go live, you'll receive a message. And you can just say hi and send us some love. So we're going to go into asking Dr. Elias how she went on her journey, the journey she's now as a medical chef. Where did that start?
Oh, that's a good question. I imagine it started a long time ago. I will start with how I became a naturopath. I was always interested in women's health. I was a pre-med and women's studies major. I created my major called a holistic study of women's health. And I went on to become a naturopathic doctor. I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do at the time. I thought perhaps midwifery or something along those lines. But I got into the program, which is a 4-year doctorate program in Portland, Oregon. And I also got into Chinese medicine at the time. So I ended up taking additional courses to get my master's in Oriental medicine. So it was a 6-year program. And as you can imagine, over the course of 6 years, you learn a great deal and you go through a lot of changes. And and right out of school, I ended up going into the clinic for, give or take, about 10 years. And all of that time in the clinic, I basically, as a naturopathic doctor, let me just back up a little bit. You do a more lengthy intake than in conventional medicine. It's maybe an hour. Some practitioners do more than an hour, sometimes 2 hours. But you get a lot of information around nutrition because we're trained in clinical nutrition and lifestyle factors and all of that. But in a nutshell, there's only so much I could do with nutrition, and I would give a lot of supplements and maybe some pharmaceuticals as well, but primarily supplements and recommendations. And after a few years, I was just finding that I was giving people supplements, but it was almost like I was trying to correct the diet with the supplements. And what people really needed the most help with was with their diets. And so I wanted to get closer to home because I really believed that health and disease really begins and ends with your diet. And so I just didn't think I was being as effective as I wanted to be. And people don't know what to eat these days. It's it's almost information overload, really. So anyway, I decided that I wanted to tailor menus and meals for people with health issues.
And now I've seen on Instagram that you're going into people's houses to actually prepare food for them. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
How
So
exciting is that?
I cook in people's homes. I also use a kitchen that I use if people don't want me to cook in their home. But I just meet with them and figure out what their needs are. And some clients just don't have the time and need to eat healthier. And other clients have actual medical conditions. You know, I have a lot of diabetes, heart conditions, things like that. A lot of GI issues, IBS, IBD, where people, you know, they just really need help nutritionally and with meal prep.
Do you find that people don't eat what they should eat? I'm going to remove the should, what they could eat to be healthier because of time or because they really don't know what to eat and how to prepare it? What's the main obstacle in their way?
That's a good question. I think I would say my first inclination is to say they're equal, but I do think a lot of people do know what to eat. But time is first and foremost the issue that everyone comes to me with. You know, you work full time, you come home at the end of the day, you want to eat within an hour, and you may know roughly what to eat, like, okay, vegetables, you know, whole foods diet, but I have an hour to come up with that meal and I don't
Yeah.
know what to do. So,
And because what I can hear when people listen to something like that is, well, vegetables, 1 hour, is it going to really be good? Because a lot of people that I encounter, they have this idea that if it's healthy, it's not tasty. And
yeah.
I think it's not true. And I know even the food that you're making is beautiful because I've seen the pictures on Instagram. And I actually, being French, you know, I value food a lot.
Thank you.
It looked delicious. So do you run into that too, that people have this resistance thinking that it's not going to be tasty?
Yes, I do hear that a lot when I cook for people. They say, I can't believe that you made this healthy food taste so good. I wouldn't even know that it's healthy. So we are under this notion that healthy food isn't supposed to taste good, which is very strange. I think that's sort of a new, relatively new thing here.
Well, I think we're conditioned too because we're bombarded with commercials for fast foods and you know all those foods that are addictive because they want to sell it. So people are associating pleasure of eating with all those things, and they don't realize that there is another side. Uh, in 1 hour, really, you can help somebody prepare food that's going to be look and going to be as good as what I saw you preparing.
Oh, absolutely.
No.
It's, you know, it's a matter of knowing what to have on hand. And I tell
Yeah.
people just keep it as simple as you can. Have a couple or few protein sources on hand, have a couple or few vegetables, and then you have some fats. If it's, you know, cooking fat, olive oil, pastured butter, ghee, avocado, those sorts of things. You know, that those are the primary
Yeah.
groups to work with.
What are the let's say the vegetables that you come back to the most often to give ideas to people?
Well, I like to cook seasonally. So right now there's a lot of squashes and things of that nature. And that brings me to sort of how I like to cook because my preference is to cook more or less paleo
Okay.
because of the nutritional factors in grains and legumes and dairy and foods like those. There's a lot more nutritional value in vegetables. You can get the same things that you would get from grains. So the complex carbohydrates of vegetables, squashes, beets, artichoke, parsnips,
Oh.
you know,
Can you
all this.
explain Some people may not know what paleo is, so just to give a brief description.
Yes, so paleo is a way of eating. It comes from the Paleolithic era. That's the idea. The idea is that that's how our ancestors ate before processed foods came about. There's a lot of controversy around that, but I would just say that a pretty simple definition would be to cut out processed foods. So if you're not eating processed foods, you are eating the foods I mentioned: protein, healthy protein sources, vegetables, and healthy fats.
Yeah.
So you're cutting out all of the breads and the pastas and the muffins and the crackers and the chips and, you know, things like that that really don't really give you too much in the way of nutrition.
Yes.
And then just maximizing your nutrients with all the foods that you're choosing. That would be my definition. So some people include dairy in that and some people don't. That's another controversial topic. But for me, it comes down to quality and if you can tolerate dairy itself, basically.
Yes. I know. I'm trying to remove dairy from my diet, and being French and loving cheese it's a whole challenge for me. Yeah.
Yes.
So in a way, it's a more natural approach to food because our body was meant to digest something that's made by Mother Nature more than but by what we make today.
Yes, exactly. I look at it as prevention of disease because it really does come down to what you eat. And if you think of all of disease, the origin of it is inflammation, no matter what we're talking about. If we're talking about gut issues or allergies or arthritis or anything, it comes down to inflammation of your tissues, which ultimately arise from your gut because that's where your food comes from. The way of eating should be to sort of reduce that inflammation. So it really is removing the foods we know that can be a problem, and then also the foods that we don't know. Maybe that's where the testing comes in to know what might you be having a reaction to on an immune level.
Yes. And are there two, I don't know, we have an echo here. I don't know if you can hear the echo, but I can.
Oh, a little bit.
Yes. It's the day of technical trouble.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, be victorious.
Yes.
Are there any go-to that you incorporate in everybody's diet? Like, for example, I know my mother was talking about garlic as an antimicrobial. I don't know if it's a French word or American, but and certain ingredients that you know are there to help us. Do you have a few like that you advise everybody to eat?
I would say healthy fats. So coconut oil in general is very healthy and very versatile. You can cook with it. You can put it directly on your sweet potato or your squash. We have a negative connotation of fat in this country, that fat translates to fat on your body, which is absolutely not the case. It just happens to be the same word, which is not the case in the rest of the world. We need fat in order to make up our cell membranes, for example. Fat is a huge part of our nervous tissue, our brain. It helps with the manufacturing of vitamins. There's so many purposes. It's our main source of fuel, and actually does help us to keep our weight in check in the context of a healthy diet. So I would say coconut, olive oil, pastured butter are very important nutrients. But again, you have to be careful of what you might react to, because some people can't have dairy. When I got my kids tested, both of my boys can't have coconut, and I was cooking with coconut oil all the time. And my youngest was having some issues, and my other son was too. So I think that's valuable information because we can, be eating very healthy foods, but they may not be healthy for you individually.
So in fact, you would recommend that everybody would get tested before they start using something on a regular basis?
I do think we should all be tested for food because the nature of our environment and the nature of our food now, inevitably we all have some level of inflammation in our gut from our environment, from our food. So we all can say that we have either a health issue or a food issue. There's not many people who probably can say they're completely healthy. They don't have a single issue. They can tolerate every food there is. Most of us do. Yeah. So I think it's important to look at that, because if you don't, it's just like anything else. You know, decades down the road, you're going to come up with more inflammation. More inflammation is going to lead to chronic disease. So I just really believe in prevention of anything.
And so you do facilitate testing. How does that work for somebody that's not local? Do you send a prescription and they go to the lab? How do you do that?
I actually, they can do it at home. I can send the kit to them, and I work directly with the lab. And it's just a finger stick, so very quick. It takes about 5 to 10 minutes. It's painless. You just do it quickly and then pop it in the mail, and then the results come in a couple of weeks. So there's a way to do that remotely. I have a link on my website. It's very easy.
Okay, and yeah, and we'll talk about your website here, and I'll put it in the link, of course, in the description. So the test, do you send the sample to be tested for every kind of allergy under the sun? How do you know what to test for?
It's testing for 132 different foods, spices, and additives.
Okay.
So it's specific foods exactly, but then you can look at the groups, and I go over the results in depth to help you determine, you know, which groups to avoid, which foods to avoid, and then help you on a specific diet for the next 2 to 3 months to follow while you're reducing inflammation, and then doing some gut healing in the process so that you can eat all those foods again. The goal is to be able to eat most foods again and have all those levels go down and not have any reactivity.
And when we're talking about gut inflammation and gut reaction, I know for myself from experience, I've been researching a lot on candida and stuff like this. Is that the main issues that you see with the gut, or are there other things that are very frequent in people?
I would say the main issue that I see is a leaky gut. You've probably heard that phrase, which it's kind of hard to understand. The word is a little odd, but another word is increased, or another phrase is increased intestinal permeability, which is another word for basically your gut lining is supposed to be strong and selective for nutrient absorption, because the inside of your gut is really outside of your body until you absorb the nutrients into your circulation. That's technically outside your body. So you need that barrier, the gut barrier, to be healthy.
Yes.
And a leaky gut means that certain foods have affected the lining of the gut. Certain toxins, bacteria, viruses, anything from the environment and from the food that we take into our bodies can affect that lining. And then when it's compromised, you have your immune system gets involved, because we have up to 80% of our immune system in our gut.
Yes.
And then the immune system gets involved, and then we start to attack all kinds of things, which is a lot about food. So we start to attack foods that we normally wouldn't. We start to, it can also, the worst case is leading to autoimmunity, because you're getting confused with self versus non-self. You start to attack your own self. The immune system just gets out of hand. And the longer you have low-grade inflammation, constant inflammation, the immune system doesn't know how to, it's just giving it too many jobs to take on, and it doesn't know how to calm back down and repair. So your body doesn't have a chance to repair.
And changing the food with people, have you seen some cases where it reversed, where let's say they had an autoimmune condition and it became way better or even disappeared? Did you ever see that kind of results with changing the food?
Oh, absolutely. Many, many times. Mm-hmm.
Because I know that I have around me people who have autoimmune diseases, and a lot of them, because what the doctor, they give them the impression that it's something that's almost incurable, and that nothing will change it, and that you cannot do anything. So in your experience, that's not true.
No, not true at all. It really comes down to looking at nutrition in a more in-depth way and prioritizing your gut. You really have to spend a period of time of being strict with your diet and making your gut health a priority. And then beyond that, I find just after even a short period of time of doing that, a lot of people's symptoms get a lot better, if not go away. And I can't lie, it's not that quick. I mean, you have to keep going with it. You can't just go back to, eating unhealthy or whatever you were eating. You have to be careful and, do some things around that. But yes, just about every time people feel better and their symptoms either get better or go away.
Oh, that's perfect. So now let's go in the chef side of the business. How did you learn to prepare food? Is it something you learned by yourself, or is it something that you went to school to learn? Because I've seen what you're doing and it's very well presented. So I don't know if you had that in you and just came up with it naturally.
Yes, that's all I can say is I'm self-taught. I mean, I've enjoyed cooking most of my life. It's sort of second nature to me. I kind of have a sense of what to do. There are some things a lot of things I had to learn on my own in doing this business, but honestly, I did not go to school for it at all. That seems like a really fun thing to do now, but there's too much to do in life. I don't think I'll make it there for more schooling, but yeah, and I'm still learning along the way. I'm always learning.
So do you have like one or two recipes that you could share here really quick for people that are really healthy and maybe most of the people can eat?
A couple of recipes?
Yeah. I should have asked you that earlier.
Yes, because I don't know what to say.
I've seen something with sweet potatoes that you make in the oven on Instagram. I remember it stayed in my mind.
In the oven?
Yes.
Are they the squash rings, the delicado squash rings?
I don't
Or
think. Is it
pieces
something?
of sweet potato?
Let's go with the squash wings because that sounds pretty. That sounds really, really, really great.
Well, again, it's just about making things so simple. Yes.
While you explain, you can explain the recipe. My computer is gonna die. It's one of those days, guys, where technical issues appear from everywhere. I apologize.
It's okay.
So just give me the recipe. I really apologize.
Okay, so basically, since I cook seasonally, I'm doing a lot with squash right now. And basically, you just take a squash and take out the insides, the seeds, and cut it into slices. And then you just add a little fat of your choice, olive oil or coconut oil I like to use, and roast it in the oven at 375. Coat both sides with it, maybe in some parchment paper. And I do a lot of sage and thyme, sometimes rosemary, sea salt, and pepper. And that's it. And it's all you need. It is complete food for carbohydrates, very healthy and very tasty.
Okay, just in time. I'm sorry. It never happened to me. I'm telling you, it's one of those days today.
It is.
So I'll go back and re-listen because I want to do that recipe myself. I know your recipes look delicious. What do people need to have in their kitchen? Are there equipments that you would really recommend to people to have, like either things to slice or to make things easier and faster?
I'm not sure about easier and faster. There's a lot of cutting and slicing. I do like the veggie spiralizers because you can make the zucchini noodles, the summer squash noodles, the beet noodles. So that's really fun. And then I use my Vitamix a lot because if you're making any type of soup or purees or, appetizers, I use the Vitamix a lot. And it's just super quick and easy and very helpful.
Yeah.
So that's great.
I have a Vitamix too, and I make my smoothies in there. I make the soup. It's really fast and easy.
Yes.
What if you had one advice that you wanted to give everyone, like one thing or two things to remove from our diet, no matter what kind of conditions we have? What would be the two items that you see are the most problematic? And I know we talked about, of course, no chips and stuff like that, but are there any other items that you see our body are not meant to deal with?
Sure. The first I'd say is soy.
Oh,
It's not a healthy food. Now, in other cultures, I'm not going to speak to that because so many things are different in another culture. But in the
Yeah.
United States, the soy that we have is not easy to digest at all. And I don't know anyone that's had an easy time with it. So that's one. And then the second I would say is gluten, but I would broaden that to include more of the grains. I think most grains in general are problematic on the gut, and we are raised to believe that the more complex the grains, the better it is. So whole grains are better than refined, which is
Yes.
true in theory. However, the whole grains still contain something called anti-nutrients, which basically they make the grain very difficult to digest, and we simply can't handle it very well. And so I see a lot of problems with that as
So
well.
I'm very surprised by, because I buy tofu, but I buy it organic, and I thought it was good for me because I don't eat a lot of meat. So
Oh,
not no tofu then.
no, I'm sorry.
I'm gonna. So for people, I'm sure you have clients that are vegan. Not, and I'm not really a vegan, but I don't eat that much meat. What's an alternative to animal proteins and soy proteins?
I would say things like spirulina and algae. That's a
Oh,
protein source that a lot of vegans use. And most vegans, unless you really don't like seafood, just from a taste standpoint, but there's still ways to get it into your body that, you don't have to taste it.
and the spirulina, it comes in powder or in pills, right? Or is there a
Yeah.
way you can buy it fresh? No.
I mean, that would just be, no, not fresh, but you could get different, seaweed, other types of seaweed, but
Yes.
spirulina is best in the powder.
And I suspect that there are also healthy seaweeds and non-healthy seaweeds. How do you know which one to buy? Do you have one that you go to that you know that's not I'm sure they don't have pesticides, but they may have other bad stuff for us depending on where it's grown.
I don't know a lot about that, but a lot of seaweed you can buy organic in
Okay.
many markets and places like Whole Foods, et cetera. And that would be my recommendation. There are a lot of different ones, and I think it comes down to really your taste for it because
Yeah.
it has a very specific taste. It's very salty. Some people love it, not everyone does.
But
So
if you put it in soups, for example, it breaks the taste a little bit, because I know I sometimes make some very clear broth with veggies and stuff, and I put it in it, and it makes the taste much lower because of the soup.
yes, it does soften the taste.
Yes. So when you come to a client, your first approach is to have them tested for allergies. What's the second thing you do?
After they're tested,
Yes.
well, not everyone chooses to get tested, but if they do, then we have a very clear knowledge of what foods to eat and what foods to avoid. So I help create a meal plan around that. So I know that what they're eating is going to not be causing inflammation. And then I come up with a gut healing protocol to help work on the gut, because doing the testing is a great opportunity to not only just remove the inflammation, but it's an opportunity to actually heal the gut. So you don't have to keep revisiting this down the road many years later. So we do that, and then we introduce foods that are obviously don't cause a reaction, but also very well tolerated. You know,
Okay. What's a gut protocol?
um, so just an idea of one thing that I would recommend is a very good probiotic, because we know we need the good flora
Yes.
to balance all of the bad flora that we have. And we now know that probiotics do many more things than we even knew about before. So that's a very important thing. And then, from there, it just can go on and on. I do try to keep it simple, because that's why I did not want to keep giving people supplements. I think it gets overwhelming. So I try to keep it simple. But, if you've had a few decades on this planet and you have some chronic issues, you're going to need some help, supplement wise, nutritionally. So then you might need there's some formulas with botanicals and different things that can help heal the gut lining and get you
And
further along.
on probiotics, I know it's very confusing. You have a lot out there in the store. Uh, is there something we need to look for? Is you know how they have the numbers of probiotics, different bacteria that they have in there? Is the more the better, or is there something else, another factor that we need to look at to determine which one is the best?
That's a really good question, and it's a complicated topic for sure. They vary a lot. They vary a lot, and I think the key is to get a recommendation from someone. You know, personally, there's one that I really like, VSL3, that's prescription strength, which I think that's important too, is prescription strength, because there's a lot of over-the-counter ones that we don't even know what we're getting. But this one is prescription strength and over-the-counter, so you can buy it, but you know for sure that it's a good product, and it is marketed for people with things like Crohn's and ulcerative colitis, which tells you that it's going to be very effective.
Okay. And what about cultured food or kefir and stuff like that? Is it enough as probiotics, or do you need to still add a supplement if you have a condition, let's say if you have a leaky gut?
I think you would need more help, definitely. But I think it's also helpful to have the fermented foods in your diet as little condiments here and there, if you can tolerate them. Not everybody can, but if you can, it's very helpful.
People can't. Okay, because I know we do it in my house. That's what I was asking, and I personally love it. My kids, not as much, but I try to force it to them. So you still need. So in fact, the best way is to go see someone like you, because you have the knowledge and the expertise to know what to test for, where to go, and what to recommend, because on our own, we can waste a lot of money and not be effective, right?
That's very true. Yes, as I said before, there's just so much, not just information, but there's a lot of products on the market. And they're available to everyone, and you don't really know what you're getting unless you really have an understanding.
Okay. I want to really thank you for being here today. I know, because it's going to be also an audio podcast, we can't show exactly one of your recipe, but maybe one day we should do a Facebook Live about cooking something and showing people how they do that. I don't know, we need to talk about that, because that would be quite an experience. Do you do that at a distance, where you are with people in their kitchen and you guide them with a computer?
You know, I haven't done that before. No, but that's a great idea.
Yeah, I think it would be helping. And first, they would also have their own experience of doing it. So maybe there would be a chance for them to do it more often. Maybe that's a side of your business you could have.
Gosh.
I know.
I keep thinking of more and more things to add to the business, and it's getting out of hand. No, I'm just kidding.
I know.
That's a great idea.
You only have 24 hours a day, so you do what you can do. But thank you very much for this interview today. For example, I didn't know that soy was not good at all, so I'm going to make sure to not buy any tofu anymore, even though I was buying organic. And for people who have sensitivities, where can they find you? Where can they ask questions or look on your website to see what you have to offer?
So they could just go to my website. It's yourrxmeals.com, and I have a lot of information on there. You can also get in touch with me directly on there. You can get testing, you can get consults, whatever you like. You can get the meal service, which I also offer. So whatever I can help you with.
And I'll put that in the description of the podcast.
Okay.
There is a question I ask everybody, because I'm big on self-love, but people don't necessarily know where it starts for them. So I love to have my guests' definitions, so that it can give people ideas on what they can do to love themselves better. What's your definition of self-love?
I love this question because I don't think that we think about it enough, and I don't think that we do enough to love ourselves. Well, I think there's the obvious and the physical, which is eating nutritious food, getting enough exercise, fresh air, having fun, being with loved ones, getting emotional support. And then one that part of it that I think gets lost with people is putting yourself first, which then you're able to better help others, because that's why I do what I do. My goal is to help others, but in order to do that, I have to really take good care of myself. And part of that means, for me and for a lot of people, I think too, is protecting your energy. So protecting your energy. Are you okay?
I choked. I'm okay.
You sure? You okay? Do you have some water?
I have some water. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So protecting your energy, which means learning to say no, which basically means just listening to your needs and taking care of them first, and not letting things like, too much to take away from your time, or maybe it's people or friends who maybe just take too much of your energy away, or maybe it's obligations that you need to say no to. All of that, just really protecting what you need for yourself and the energy that you have, because we only have so much of that. So that's more or less.
That's a huge issue for a lot of people, and that's the start with saying no. And I know that most of us have a hard time because we feel guilty, but that's really where to start, because you need to protect yourself and then go from a yes that's really an authentic yes and not an obligation yes. That's
exactly
a great advice.
Exactly.
So I want to thank you for being here today. I know so many things went wrong, and in one episode, I really apologize. I promise you can listen to other episodes. We never had that many technical issues at one time, me coughing, etc. So that will be, in the movies when you have the bloopers, bloopers of this episode.
Yes.
We are authentic and raw here, so it's real, that we are ourselves, and that way it's real. For my audience, I want to let you know that I have a free workshop coming up. It's called From Self-Confidence to Soul Confidence, and you can check that out on my website, or you can register at licensetosshine.com. And until we see each other again, practice what Alia was saying. Go and say no to people and opportunities, the ones that you would feel obligated to say yes. That's a huge challenge, I know, but you will see the results are magnificent. Thank you, Alia, for being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Wonderful day. We'll see each other in a week. Have a wonderful week.
Thank you.